Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have Joe Bezotte. Am I saying that right, Joe?
Bezotte.
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 My
Yep.
apologies. And we're
Well,
going
you're
to
the
talk.
first one ever to get it wrong. So,
Am I? There we go. There we
yeah.
go. Look at that. It's going to be one of those episodes today. Apologize, Joe. Um, so we are going to talk today about burnout in the executive security kind of aspect. Joe's got a huge background. He runs his own business training executive security. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about that burnout and go from there. As always, I say take one thing away from this episode and implement it. Because if we're trying to implement too much stuff, then we get distracted and never implement anything. So just take one thing away today and run with it, and then come back and listen again. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this episode around. And as always, it's sponsored by Create From Why. You'll find more details about our motorcycle retreat in May next year down below. So, Joe, without further ado, why don't you take it away? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I was, born and raised up in Upper Michigan. If you don't know where that's at, it's in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And so there's not much around, and very high recruitment for the military, which is where I ended up going just to get out of town. So I signed up at 17, and then I spent 7 years in the military. I was a law enforcement specialist, and I was very blessed to have. I had many unique opportunities there um, that most really didn't, and I'm just very lucky there. And I attribute that to a lot of mentors who took me under the wing and provided those opportunities to me. But I got to be on. We talked about SWAT earlier offline, and I got to be part of three different SWAT teams in the military. Got to build one from the ground up, which was very interesting. That was a challenge. And then I was a training officer for the last one I was on in the military, and that's where I really started understanding that I had a passion for training. And so that's where that really stemmed from, right from there to now. So like I said, spent 7 years there. I got to compete on worldwide competition teams. It was fantastic time in the military. And then eventually, though, all good things come to an end. Even the senior NCOs, non-commissioned officers, and whatnot were saying if you had a place to go, it was a good time to leave. So I'm like, oh, I don't need to be told twice. So I jumped on that, and luckily had some connections with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I had trained with their special operations response teams for years, kind of a training existence there. And so I jumped on that and went with that for 6 years. After 9/11 happened, I heard the calling like many others did, and applied and got accepted to the Federal Air Marshal program, where I ended up getting first assigned to the Denver field office in Colorado for 3 years. And after my first year there, I was assigned to the training department because I'd already been in training for so many years, had some good background in that. And then met my wife in Colorado, who drugged me back to the cold north of Minnesota. So transferred back to the Minneapolis field office. And she couldn't be from Maui, right? Or, Kauai or something. No, from Minnesota. So yeah, so here I am in Minnesota. Spent a total of 19 years. I ended up being a senior federal air marshal and spending out of those 19 years, probably 9 or 10 in the training division, running different training programs, lead training officer, whatnot. While I was in there, I started this company, Core Security Consulting, and soon began training some different teams in different areas, such as we talked about executive protection teams for Target, US Bank, Medtronic, a few other larger companies, as well as middle-sized companies, and then also training worship security teams and courses for everyday citizens who just want to be more prepared. So that's kind of where I'm at. now I'm retired in 2021, and took my company. I've got my own private training facility now. So that's a big jump for me. So yeah, I've been doing that this year pretty steadily. And winter months tend to slow down around Minnesota just because of weather. And
A little cold up
so,
there.
oh man, so cold. So yeah, and that's fine with me. I don't want to go out in the cold either anyway. So
Oh, that's perfect. You got seasons. You're like, hey, I get to, the weather makes me have a break. That's perfect.
it
Um,
does, it does.
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, you've had a great career. Thanks for everything that you've done, and thanks for all the training and all that you've done for the air marshals and everybody along the way. Uh, Before we go into kind of a few little specific things, what would you say, because we are talking about burnout here at Fight the Burnout, what would you say your definition of burnout would be?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, and I think that's going to vary from person to person for sure, because every person that's even experienced it has a, slightly different approach to it. But I think if I was to define it, it's basically when you no longer find any joy or pleasure in your work, and or it could also be when conditions of your work are so miserable for whatever many different reasons that you don't want to go to work.
Mm,
Um, I experienced both sides of that several different times in my career. Um, I don't think anyone's impervious to it. I think it can affect everybody and anyone. Um, so, yeah, I think that those are the reasons I think they are and why they happen. Um, and of course, they're reflected in your health, your family life, your personal life. It's a trickle down factor.
mm. No, definitely. It ends up spider webbing through everything.
Yeah,
I can definitely vouch for that one. I hit such a dark level of burnout and everything that felt nothing. That was a
yeah.
long journey coming back out. It's why this podcast was started. Uh, so you've done lots of different roles and lots of different things. Have you had experiences where where you've had like major burnout within those different roles?
You know, in the military, I was burnt out right before I left, and I think that really applied to the reasons why I left. Um, that was and they're all different types of burnouts. I feel like I experienced burnout in all three careers, to be honest with you. Um, but they were all different. I would say the military burnout was more so. I remember distinctly, and we're talking 30 years ago. So this was an impactful moment, right? I was standing in what we call roll call, beginning of shift, getting our intel, what's going on the base, what do we got to look out for, blah blah blah. And I'm looking down the row of everyone standing there, looking left and looking right. And I was an E4 at the time, and I'm looking left and looking right. I'm seeing all these E5s and E6s, like these higher ranking NCOs doing the exact same thing I'm doing as an E4. I'm like, this is what I got to look forward to. I mean, I don't want to do this forever, right? And I'm like, I'm already burnt. I'm already sick of doing this. Where I was to the point where I was, on patrol on the base, and literally someone would have had to run into my patrol car for me to write them a ticket. I mean, I did not care anymore. And I'm like, this is the only thing keeping me from doing anything worse to myself is, the SWAT stuff. I love that. I was passionate about it. I'm like, I can't do this any longer. And
Yeah.
so that was my type of burnout there. It's just, I was done. I was just toast. I'd been doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and just burnt out, going to the same calls, going, doing the same roles and responsibilities. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Um, so my answer was to leave, and that was a great time to leave. So it was an answer to prayers right there. So I just, I was, like I said, very blessed. I had very easy transition. I didn't even miss a paycheck from there to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Jumped right over there. They're happy to have me. And so yeah, then I went to the Bureau of Prisons where again, I believe it was pretty much the same thing when I hit that, and that was probably 4 or 5 years into that, where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I remember someone came to tell me, and I'll never forget this. He says, we do a 20-year career here. It's kind of like doing a 7-year sentence. That's how much time you spent in jail. I'm like that. Okay, I'm out. I gotta find something, man. I'm not gonna spend 7 years, 7-year, stint of my life in prison. So I started applying for other jobs. I started applying for the U.S. Marshal Service, and I was actually waiting to hear from them when 9/11 happened, and I almost immediately got on board with the Federal Air Marshal Service, which was a great job, which is, probably the highlight of my entire career. I love that job. It was very, how do I say? It was very impactful to me. It was something I was doing something for a reason. We were doing the most amazing training that I've ever even thought possible. I mean, it was, you're getting trained by Delta guys and SEALs and all of this. These guys were, tip of the spear, and I was like so grateful for that. But again, the burnout is it doesn't matter what you're doing. You can be burnt out doing anything, no matter how much you like it. I liken it to, say you love to fish, right? If you were just, I love to fish. I wish I could fish every single day of my life, right? You're just super passionate about fishing. But then someone comes along and says, hey, I want to pay you to fish. I'm like, great, right? Answer to prayers, right? But you're going to have to wear what I tell you to wear when you're fishing. You're going to have to fish with what I tell you to fish with. And you have to fish where I tell you to fish and for how long I tell you to fish. And I don't care how much you love fishing, that's going to get real old real quick.
Yep.
Right? So now you've just taken something you're passionate about and you've just destroyed it, basically, right? So again, I was very passionate about the job. I was very passionate about training, and again, I didn't leave so much of a burnout there as I did the other jobs with that under those circumstances. But it was during COVID. I was in the training division, and I'm sitting there in my office. I still have programs I still got to keep up on and things like that I'm running. And I have a supervisor come in the office, and I'm already doing 3 or 4 different things. And it's COVID. No one's in there because it's training. No training is going on because it's COVID. But I've got these other programs I got to do, and I've got things to do. And I have a supervisor come in there and start asking me to do other things, which he could have easily done. And I'm like, you know what? I'm making $2 an hour here between that and my retirement. So I think I'm done. I think I'm going to go home. So that was that. It was just one of those days,
Yeah.
It's just like, I think I'm done here now. So, but like I said, that was a great job. As far as burnout goes, I really didn't experience so much as an air marshal. I will say this: I was, like I mentioned earlier, I was in that position. I was 9, 10 out of 19 years. I was in the training division. Okay,
Mhm.
so I was very, very blessed. I was on the ground most of the time, like half the time as an air marshal, where a lot of guys are not. Those guys are flying around the world. I mean, the world, 5 days a week. And
It's
let me
taxing.
tell you, that gets burnt out. I mean, those years that I did fly constantly, my family suffered, I suffered, my marriage suffered. That's partly the reason that I did seek those ground-based assignments, we called them, which was mostly training.
Mm.
So I recognized that early. I'm like, there's no way I can keep this pace up. There's
Yeah.
no way. And so by applying myself in the positions that I knew I would excel in, I kind of switched everything over to that. I became much more grounded. My body felt better. My mental focus was better. My marriage was better. My family life was better. My kids like, who's that guy? I'm like, that's your dad. He's here now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was crazy. So, you know, as a matter of fact, quick story, when I retired with another individual who was a flying, what we call federal air marshal for his entire career. And I called him up a couple months after we retired. I said, "Hey, Kevin, how you doing? Just want to check in with you, He says, I said, "You're still good?" He's like, "Best decision I ever made in my life. I am so happy. I should have done it earlier." And he was so ecstatic. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wow, really?" He's like, "Yes, this is great." Well, then we got off the phone. And I'm like, "Why is he so much happier than I am about the whole retirement?" I kind of miss the guys, the camaraderie.
Yeah.
Well, then it hit me. That guy flew for 20 years.
Yeah.
He was totally burned out.
He was physically
Oh,
burned out, not necessarily
absolutely.
mentally. He was
Oh
physically
yeah,
burned
he
out.
felt like Superman.
Yeah.
I mean, he was getting sleep every night. He was on the same time zone every day.
In his
I
own
mean,
bed every day next to
oh
his
yeah.
wife.
So yeah, but yeah. So those are kind of how the different aspects of burnout for me and my career. I'm very blessed that I wasn't in the streets like a lot of my friends are who are from Minneapolis Police Department, St. Paul Police Department, Denver, Colorado. I talk to all those guys. I keep in touch. As you know, all the law enforcement, we're always keeping in touch with each other, especially military guys. And, um, I talk to them, and the things that they have had to do and seen over the past few years it's almost unimaginable.
Yeah.
And with that, it's almost unimaginable and how they can cope with that.
Mm.
So I always make it a point to reach out to them, check in, see how everything's going. Um, but yeah, so that's my story on burnout.
So with all those different experiences, what would you say, what do you believe is the common thing that got you to that stage of burnout? Because we got to know, obviously, if we have an idea of
Right.
the cause, then you can always, shift and change it in the future. What do you believe is the cause that got you to because it sounds like there's a bit of a pattern there. I don't know if you
I
see
think
it.
there were two things for me, basically boiled down. One was the people you interact with, right? The things you're doing, the calls you're going on. More so for that for me was in the military, going to domestic calls, going to all these different things, and you're always dealing with the worst. You're always dealing. You're not going. You're never being called. Hey, there's this guy super happy over at his house with his marriage and everything. Can you go over and just check on him? Like, no, you don't do that. You go to the guy who's beating up his wife, or you go to the hostage situation, or you go to this, and you're always dealing with the worst. And it's like you start thinking everybody out there besides law enforcement, besides your brothers and sisters in arms, everyone else is just crazy and demented. And it's like that's how you start perceiving the world.
Mhm.
And so that was one aspect of it. The second aspect of it was leadership. And the leadership, honestly, in my career, I've seen it was fantastic when I started it. And I feel like for me at least, in all of my career, it's almost gotten to be almost non-existent, where true leadership is not there anymore. It's like a unicorn. If you find someone who has excellent leadership abilities and can lead and manage people, it's hard to find.
Mm. Let's start with the first one. What do you believe, now looking back, that you maybe implement now in your own business to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that that negative side of stuff doesn't drain people down that you're working with or that you're dealing with, um in that aspect?
Okay. You know, for the first one, dealing with all those people and everything, and part of that is the camaraderie. You have to rely on each other. Um, the mental mindset part of that is critical. Having that warrior mindset where uh, you will go home at the end of the shift. There is no other option. You will survive anything. You're basically superhuman, and I would train a lot of our guys in our at the Federal Air Marshal Service. We had a simulator in our field office, and we would do simunition training in there constantly. And we would drill it into all of our guys, like, because some of our scenarios, you have like 10 hostage, or 10 people trying to take over the plane, right? 10 terrorists on the plane, and you don't know what's going to happen. You just go in there and you got your helmet on, you got your ammunition gun, and you're just giving them a scenario. Okay, we're in from Minneapolis to London. We're halfway through the flight. Buckle up and enroll. And you're like, okay, what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so it could be anything from just a little domestic you have to deal with, or it could be someone trying to get in the cockpit door, or it could be terrorists. You have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, lots
Well,
of different
anyway,
options that can happen on an airplane.
oh, so many things. So we would do that, say enroll, and these 10 guys would just start standing up and just pepper spraying them. Well, that's fine. We're just charging through and we're just killing them all. Doesn't matter. If you're getting hit, doesn't matter. The idea was there's not enough lead in anyone's gun that's going to put you down. You are super freaking human.
Yeah.
And so we would drill that into their heads so much that anytime we go to any kind of other federal law enforcement training, situation or any classes or anything, they'd be like, all right, where's my air marshals? And because they're like, we love you guys, man. We love the way you train. But because we just charge straight at whatever threat, because you think about it, we're in a tube. There is no cover. There's no backup. There's no hiding behind cover to call for backup.
No.
There's
nothing. There's concealment, but there's no cover.
Yeah, there's nothing, man. And you're in a tube at 30,000 feet with 300 and some people on there. It's you, man. So
because there's only you probably can't tell me, but I take it there's only one or maybe two of you on an airplane.
There's only a couple. There's only a couple. So you got to control that aircraft with 300 and some people, just a couple of you. So it's tricky.
Yeah. How do you? Anyway, sorry, go ahead. Carry on.
Yeah. So backing up a little bit, the camaraderie was one, and then the training was to always trying to make yourself better trained so you can cope with everything easier. Yeah. And then the mental mindset was the warrior mindset, that you're going home, that you are superhuman, that you are you're out there to help people, but you're also going home at the end of the night, and you will win at all costs no matter what situation presents itself. Those are the things that I would try to help influence my buddies, and they would help influence me. So those are things that kind of helped with that. We also had to have that release, though. We have to have that stress release, and that was, I learned early on, for me, it was fitness. It was, if I didn't work out every other day at least, man, I get angry, right? Almost, it's kind of like a hangry version of me. It's like I even my wife will get to recognize it. She'd be like, all right, you haven't worked out today, have you? I'm like, no. So go work out, come back, and we'll have this discussion again. I'm like, okay. Yes, dear. So yeah. But fitness for me, you have to have outlets. You have to have an outlet too. For me, it was fitness. And then the other part of that was doing a little woodworking in the side, just kind of detach, unplug into something that was completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, those are those tricks for me.
No, I love that. The stuff you were saying about the training and that warrior mindset. I picked up pretty quickly within my training and stuff, is that warrior mindset of I'm going home at the end of the day. And I my business, the motto that I use in my coaching and helping people is train hard, test easy.
I like it.
Because when you train fucking hard as shit, then when those tests come, when you're in that tube and there's 10 terrorists coming at you, oh fuck, this is easy. I've trained for this.
Yeah.
I've gone through this scenario a million times.
Your mind's already been there, right?
Yeah, mine's already been there, so it's nice and easy.
Right.
How do you help the guys? Because I know for me, for personal experience, I went from frontline. I'd love to know what you did. Went from frontline, looking at that image of a criminal, of those people that you deal with all the day, the domestics, the burglars, the whatever it is that you're dealing with, and so it kind of does have a bit of a profile to it,
right?
To then going into a tube where you're watching everyone,
Yeah.
Like, because that's what I did. And I know as executive security, that's exactly what you do. You go from having a, who do I, oh, I can pretty much pick out who's going to be, who's up to no
Right.
good, to then watching everybody in suits, or,
Right.
um, how did you deal with that and still be able to turn off and not get to a stage where you, or did you get to a stage where you didn't trust anyone?
Uh, it's an interesting question. I remember when I first started, my first flight, right? I get on a plane, I have two other guys with me, kind of breaking me in my one flight. That's it. You just get one flight with a couple other guys first, then you're on your own. And I got on that flight and I felt like I was breaking the law. I'm in a commercial airport with a gun on. I'm getting on a plane. I'm like, oh, so, but it was different. I was like, wow, this is interesting. Um, but like you key in on, you're watching everybody, you're looking at we're trying to read those behavioral indicators, looking for the telltale signs, not just for the bad guys, but we're also looking for the good guys. Like, who are we going to be able to count on this flight?
Yep.
Footwear, we're looking at everything, and it's like, okay, that guy, he's my able-bodied passenger if I need one, right?
He's
And
he's probably law enforcement. He's probably
yeah,
excellent.
yeah, you
You
could
can pick
just
him up. You
tell.
can pick him up a
Yeah,
million miles
right,
away.
exactly, exactly. But we did have some fun with it too, and that's part of it too, is you can't just be dead serious about it the whole time. You got to play with it a little bit, and part of that for me was, you know, convincing other people I wasn't an air marshal. People be like, hey, "You're probably the air marshal." I'm like, dude, I don't even like flying. I couldn't do that job if you paid me. And then we start picking out who we think it is. Like, who you think it is? Then like, maybe that guy over there. You know. So you have a little fun with it, but as far as turning it off, it's very tough. I still am constantly doing it, even on vacation. Drives my wife nuts. We'll be on the beach in Cancun, and we'll get off the beach and be like, hey, did you hear the conversation about that the guy behind us to the left? What guy? I'm like, never mind. And just you're paying attention to everything, all the time, and that's just something I think that just is going to stay with you for quite a while,
Hmm.
unless you have a trick to turn it off. I haven't found, but it stays with you. Especially, and I guess I'm still in the training realm. I'm still dealing with training people and stuff like that, so maybe that's sticking around with me a little longer. But as far as treating people the same way, or looking at people that way, um, I think that is waning on me, because since I've retired, I don't believe I perceive people as I used to, as negatively. I still have a pretty good read on people, I think, and to my wife's chagrin, she does not like, it's like, how do you know that? I'm like, I just know. No, you don't. 2 months later comes out. I'm like, yep, well. So yeah,
That's yeah. So when it comes to the switching off on that, it's yeah, it does take a while, doesn't it? It takes a
yeah,
little bit to do it. I think, yeah, being in that same realm, it does take longer because you're still training people on how to do it, so
right,
you still need to have that awareness. Whereas myself, my training is all about helping people disconnect because
right,
I was that same way. The key things that I always say is think of the outcome. As protection guys and as law enforcement, we always have an outcome that we want to have. Whether we want to go home at the end of the day, whether we want to, keep the plane safe, or is when we're not on duty as such, is the outcome. Am I here for to be with my family, or am I here to protect the whole plane?
right.
And we have the training. And I learned this very early on because I had massive paranoia and massive anxiety, which is one of the couple of the reasons I left law enforcement, or took a break to start with. And it was I remember walking into a seminar of 5,000 people and going, how the hell am I going to do this? I don't know if you ever have had that, where you walk into a
Oh yeah,
massive crowd and you're like,
yep,
oh shit, okay,
yeah,
cool. And then at
yeah,
the end of the first day of this seminar, they have you put the worst thing that you've done into a hat. You don't put your name or anything on it, into like a bucket, and they collect them all and they draw out some random ones. And there are people in there that I would have locked up in the past. Like, I'm like, you've done what? And I'm sitting there going, and this conference is 5 days long, 6 days long. And
Wow.
this is the end of the first day. And so I had to do this really quickly because that conference cost me $6,000 US. Plus, I had to fly from New Zealand to Florida.
Right.
So I ain't
Yeah.
walking out of that shit.
Right.
And so the thing that I learned really quickly there was, why am I here? What's the purpose of me being here? I have training that is beyond 90% of the people in here, giving that buffer of, other, maybe some other law
Sure.
enforcement people. I have training that's better in here. And somebody turned to me and I told them what was going on in my head on the beginning of the second day. And they go, okay, Chris, well, where's your mind right now? I was like, well, okay, I'm thinking about where's my wife because she wasn't in my group anymore. Where's my mom? She's not my group anymore. And then where are the exits in case something happens, in case somebody starts to go crazy in here?
Right.
And they go, okay, cool. Well, where are the exits? And I went here, 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 here. And oh, there's one behind that curtain, behind the stage. There's also one behind that curtain. They go, well, you just told me 3 that I didn't know about. So I'm going to follow you if something does happen. But she's like, but then they go, well, why are you here? I'm like, to help myself and better myself and to work on me. And they're like, well, is you sitting here anxious and not actually paying attention helping?
Right.
and 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 I was like, no. They're like, well, you have the training, rely on it.
Sure.
Rely
Yeah.
on it and then focus on why you're actually here and just continually remind yourself. And over time, as we know, just like shooting, habit, 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 habit,
Yep.
next thing it's second nature. And that's literally what I do now. So I don't have to, I'm not one of those guys that has to sit with my face to the door and my back to the
Right.
wall. And because when I'm in a restaurant, I'm there for my wife and I know my sixth senses are picking up
Sure.
shit that 90% of people won't. So that's
Right.
like probably the key thing that I always say to law enforcement when they're going into it is really make sure that you remember why you're there. Is it there to protect everybody? If it is, cool, then switch that part of your brain on and be that
Right.
protector. If it's to
Yep.
be there and be present with your wife, with your kids, with whatever, then yes, take a split second, bring awareness that you need to calm yourself down, and then go, okay, cool, rely on that. Because a lot of times when you actually do rely on that training, you actually pick more things up
Right.
instead of trying to constantly focus on something and trying to find it. It's like when you try and find your keys and they're sitting in your pocket and you're like, where the fuck are my keys? Where are my keys? Where are my keys? And then like 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, they're in my pocket.
Well, I have to tell you this, man. There's one thing that I do not miss, but I even today, this has been 2 years now. Even today, I'll have dreams that I'm going on a mission and I forgot something or misplaced something, or I'm like, wake up like, are you serious? Come on. I'm like, I used to have those all the time working,
Yeah.
but we all did. And
Yeah.
so, but now I'm like, I'm done with it. I'm still having these dreams.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy
Yeah. And
how embedded, like how that fear can be embedded in you.
oh,
So
it's that fear and that anxiety because we are so, as
yeah,
first responders, you don't go into this profession or to the executive protection level because that's the next level kind of stuff. My wife used to get pissed off with me. I used to be like, I'm a glorified bullet catch. That is my role. I'm a glorified bullet catch. And,
yeah.
and she's like, I hate it when you say that because it literally puts an image in her head. And I was like,
Right.
but it is true. You're taking yourself to that next level of stuff. And so you do have to have that next level of training. And so there's all that much more pressure on yourself. And this is the thing that I tell all my law enforcement guys when I'm going in. Look, when you step foot into the operation, it's like when you go on a holiday. And like my wife says it all the time, oh, I feel like we're forgetting something. I go, well, guess what? We got a credit card. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that same exact
Exactly.
thing, just again,
Yeah.
relying on the fact that you do train so hard that it
Yeah.
actually is going to be pretty easy. So no, I love that. So Joe, you are now doing training people in executive protection, training people to, on the stuff that you used to do. Uh, so that they're exceptionally good. What are some of the key things that you instill in them, both physically and also mindset wise?
Um, well, each person's or each team can have its own challenges, but for the most part, what I try to instill in them is a mental mindset. I talk a lot about that um, as far as how it relates to the warrior mindset as well as training, like how important training is in the mindset as far as getting repetitions in and things like that, turning those paths and those neural network pathways from a pathway to a road to a superhighway, building all of those neural patterns up over repetition. And so I talk a lot. I tell every team I train with, I spend a lot of time on that. And the other thing I try to instill in them is physical fitness. Fitness to me, and this has been a debate that goes back before I was ever even born in law enforcement. I mean, and it's still going on. Like, should there be standards? How do we make standards for everyone? Fitness standards are important. Like, it'll never happen at this point. I'm pretty sure. There's never going to be one fitness standard for law enforcement, but I try to instill in them, hey, listen, have something, have some standard for yourselves that you keep accountable for.
Mm.
If you're not accountable, it's a lot easier to fall down that slippery slope of, well, I'll work out tomorrow, or I'll do that next week, or whatever. I don't have time. You have to be accountable for it, um, and holding each other accountable. And a lot of them really took that to heart. They've developed standards within those companies to reinforce their firearms qualifications, their fitness standards, and many other standards. I've helped them design all those, and I think that's a big key factor. Is, like I said, for me, and I think for a lot of law enforcement, people dealing with stress in any way, shape, or form, fitness is crucial. Physical fitness, it helps your body cope with all that stress. Um, Mental mindset, yes, it's there. You have to be able to dial in when you have to. You have to be able to compartmentalize things, and you have to be able to know when to release it all and just be yourself. That's the hardest part, as we just
Yeah.
discussed. But so those are the things that I try to emphasize to them for dealing with stress.
No, I love that. Yeah, I talk a lot about the mental mindset, but I'm also a huge fitness guy as well. And I've had a lot of people on the podcast, done a lot of research myself. It takes 10 to 15 minutes of high intensity
Yeah,
exercise to
yeah,
rebalance yourself. We run consistently. I don't care who you are and what you say, but as law enforcement, you run consistently on adrenaline unless you learn to shut off and shift that mindset from
yes,
what you're doing on duty. When you're on duty, whether you're just sitting in the patrol car having lunch, you still have that adrenaline going and that alertness. And so that fitness can balance that, doing 10 minutes of high intensity after work, doing 10, priming yourself before work, massive thing. So I love that you instill that warrior
yep,
mindset that we go home is excellent as well. I do have a question on how you, because I know, like, for myself, my wife has always said, and I've even had people say, man, Chris, your mindset is like your body will break before your mind does. And it's taken me a long time to, like, it's been a great thing for law enforcement, a great thing for
yeah,
training, great thing for any
right,
physical challenge that I have. I will just keep going. But
right.
it's also what broke me mentally. So what would you say, what would be your advice for people when it comes to using that to go home mentally wise as well, and to that disconnect side of things?
Yeah, the disconnect is key because, like you said, I mean, you go home to your family and you don't want to carry that baggage in with you, right?
Mm.
So, compartmentalization is what I did a lot of. Um, I remember this this story I read where, and it's kept with me over 20 years probably. So, a story I read was this officer would always go home, and his kids will always see him come home. He'd always hit the tree in the front yard, and eventually they're like, why do you always hit this? Like, I leave everything out there. Everything that happened at work is out there on that tree.
Mm.
So I'm just free now. And if you can do that, great. I
Yeah.
tried a few different, variations of that. Didn't really work for me. Until I stumbled on what did work for me, and that was, like I said, dealing with it physical fitness wise, detaching, doing something else that's completely opposite of your job, getting your mind working in a completely different mindset, different mind frame. Um, Woodworking for me was like, that has nothing to do with law enforcement. I can't even make that. I can't even, if I tried, I couldn't make that about law enforcement, right? Unless I'm whittling a gun. I mean, I can't build a bench thinking, no, this would be good at the department. I'm like, no, it's woodworking. It's find something that will distract you, and that's different for everyone.
Yeah.
I think everyone's got their own triggers. They have their own pitfalls, and I think that each person has to find that one thing for themselves that, hey, that I can detach doing this or that.
I love that. Did you find that when you were in law enforcement, that did you talk to your significant other, your wife or girlfriend at the time, whoever, about what was going, what was going on at work? And if you didn't, do you wish that you kind of had, so that she understood what was kind of going on with you?
I started to, because I got married when I was still in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, um, and there's a lot of stuff going on in there. I mean, we were dealing with. I started off at the Lompoc Penitentiary in California, which was a maximum security
Yeah.
prison, and that was one of the four big L's they called it. And um, there was someone getting killed there every day. Every day there's a murder in there, and so you were dealing with that, and you were dealing with taking inmates down with who had shanks on them, and it was bad. So the prison system made me very jaded, and so I started talking to my wife about that, and honestly, it turned out to be a mistake, honestly, because
Mm,
it just brought her down too. It was like,
gotcha.
I can't handle this. This is beyond her pay grade, like,
Yeah.
no, you need to talk to somebody else about this. So that's what happens, though, is you end up, doing that with your coworkers, your
Yeah.
brothers and sisters, right? And that's why you become so tight knit. And you have to find those people to me, in that community who they're not just going to bash everybody else or whatever, but they're going to try to help you.
Yeah.
That's the key. You
Yeah,
can't
I
just
was gonna
pull
say that's the
seven
that's the
guys.
key part. You can't just sit there and bash
Right,
about stuff. You've got to actually
right,
be like, hey, we're gonna talk about stuff and get this out, whether it be your partner, my significant other
right.
could have handled a lot more of it. But yeah, it's that finding those people. I love
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I could have talked to everybody I work with about it, but no, you have to find those people you respect, and those people who um, have that ability, and you have to figure that out. You have to figure out who in your circle of trust has that ability
Mm,
to listen to you, and you can listen to them, and you guys can understand that, hey, this is just work, man, but we have to, help each other, encourage each other. You have to have those solid friends, and I still have those friends from the Federal Air Marshal Service, from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the military. I still talk to. um, a lot of them are still there at work, and they'll call me and complain about something, and I'm like, man, that sucks. I'm sorry it's happening, man. I said, what can I do for you? I mean, let's go out, have a beer, or go out, have lunch or something like that, and talk about it some more, whatever. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, gosh, I'm not there anymore. But yeah, um, no, you have to find those people that you can count on, depend on, and surround yourself with those people, not the people that think like you and act like you and necessarily, but people are better than you, people you think are better than you, honestly. Um,
well,
I
you become the average of the seven people you hang around with the most.
Yes, exactly,
And so if you're
exactly.
hanging
And
around with
I've
people that,
surrounded myself. I always surrounded myself with the creme of the creme. I mean, like those guys. Luckily, they accepted me. I don't know why. Maybe I just pestered them enough, but they were the best of the best. And even now, the top 10 guys at the field office here. I mean, we're all really good friends. Um, you just kind of gravitate towards each other. each other after a while, and that's a good thing. As far as sharing with your spouse, I mean, that's again, that's dependent of your spouse, right? Do they want to know? Can they handle that? That's another
it
question.
it
Do they
comes down to
want
that
to handle that?
communication. It's also that
Right.
communication, how many law enforcement don't actually even communicate? Like they'll just like end up exploding at their wife or whatever about stuff because
Right.
and instead of like and never even have that conversation with them. And I don't think you need to, different people are able to go into different detail with because they can handle different stuff because of their experiences. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's that at least having that conversation with them and going, hey, it was one of those days today where I don't want to, you don't need to know all the details, but it was just
Right.
one of those
Yes.
days. And that is
Well,
why I'm like, I'm going to be a little bit weird today.
yes, yes, indeed. And I'm not saying that, I talked to my wife and that was it, but we came to that agreement basically where that has to come from that. It has to come from that sharing point where you're sharing with and you're like, wait a minute, this probably isn't going to be real good for both of us. So like, okay, well, now though, now you understand it's just a day in my life, now you can kind of count on me. You know what I'm going to be like when I come home, if it's a bad one or if it's a good one. So
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
understand that. So,
Communication's number one. I
yes.
think, yeah, as police, we harp it in, communicate with your officers, communicate with, people, and we get really bad at it at home.
Well,
Um,
then, as a federal air marshal, what made it even worse is I couldn't share anything with it because nobody's supposed to know what we did or
yeah,
who we were. And we weren't even supposed to tell our wives or spouses or families where we were going when.
yeah,
We could tell them when we got there, but that was it.
yeah,
So I'd be like, well, honey, I'm leaving tomorrow. Where are you going? "Well, tell you tomorrow."
yeah,
That
yeah.
went over real well.
Yeah, I was gonna say it. You got to have a trusting spouse, man. You got to have a very
Yes.
trusting spouse for that. I mean,
Yes.
even I used to have the same thing with when I used to do diplomatic protection. You can't tell them
Right.
what you're doing tomorrow, or
Right.
oh, what are you doing? Where are you taking the PM? And I'll let you know after I do
Right.
it.
Right. Yeah.
um, so last, as we kind of wrap up, there was one thing that I wanted to talk to you about because I'm a huge self-care guy since I got out.
Sure.
The things that you said um about doing things that you like have nothing to do with law enforcement. I recognize this too late. Everything that I did was always for somebody else. I've got a big old
Right.
American truck out here that I work on, and it's all for my dad and his business. I used to go to the shooting range because it would
Right.
better me at work, but that was for me. I used to, do all these different things, and there's hardly any of them that I actually did that were just for me.
Right.
For those out there that might be struggling like I used to, what would be your advice to really find that thing that disconnects you from work so that you can recharge your brain, you can calm things down, you can let things go?
Yeah, it's really about finding what makes you happy, right? I mean, um, for every person, that's going to be different, you know. Like you said, and I can relate to that. We as 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 a federal air marshal, the most bonus you could possibly get at the end of the year, okay, the max. If you walked on water, if you changed agency policy and just took down 4 terrorists on a plane, the max you could get was 3% raise at the end of the year. Right? So you're like killing yourself for a 3% raise. And then they promise you it, and then you'd end up getting like headquarters knocked it down, it's 2.25. And just keep doing what you're doing though. And I'm like, what? It makes no sense. So having been retired now, I didn't see it there. I did see it after the fact, at the end of the year, like, oh, you didn't get it, you got this. You didn't get it, you got this. I'm like, why do I keep chasing that carrot? But then I'd start chasing the carrot again. So after I left, though, I'm like, what was I doing? That's insanity. So now, being my own business owner, everything I do betters my own business. It's fantastic, right? So I get what you're saying there. For me to find that happiness, to find something that helps me cope with things, um, honestly, you just got to find out what makes you happy, what hobby makes you happy, what passion makes you happy, and go with that. What I will say is this: play the long game, right? Um, Staying healthy physically, mentally, live a long and healthy life. Understand that at the end of the day, you're going to be replaced moments after you leave your work, right? They don't care. They don't care. I turned my stuff into a supervisor the day I retired. Um, Granted, he wasn't. Him and I weren't on the best terms, but I turned my stuff into this guy, and it's like, all right, we got to do this quick. I got a medical appointment I got to get to. That was it. That was my send off. I'm like, okay, and that was it, right? It's not like they're like everyone's pining at the office. Boy, I wonder where Joe is. Wonder what he's doing now. It moves on, man. It doesn't even think about you. So think about that. That's the long game, right? Don't worry about work, man. Work will take care of itself. Play the long game. Play it for the family. Play it for your health. Play it for your mental health, physically, mentally, to live that long and healthy life, man. My kids still believe that I'm immortal. I keep telling them that. So I'm never gonna die. I'm gonna outlive them. That's my mindset. So there it is.
That's that warrior mindset, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. And the thing is, like I said, you're going to be replaced. So do what's best for you, not what's best for the company all the time. Yeah, be a good employee, but man, life is much bigger than your work. So
I love that. I love that. And on that, tell us a little bit about Core. Tell us a little bit about what you do, your executive, training that you do now, because one, I'm curious in it with my background, and two, I know there might be listeners out there that want to upskill themselves, not for your thing for you, but to just keep that warrior mindset going.
right.
Um,
Well, and that's the thing. I love doing what I do. So
yeah,
it's a win-win
exactly.
for me.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, tell us a
Um,
little bit about that.
so yeah, core security consulting. We do training, like I said, for executive protection teams. We don't have any, honestly, individual courses for those. You have to come to me as a team, and then I start training you.
Yeah.
Because I'm basically doing a lot of the bigger teams. So I train those guys in 4 different modules. There's a physical fitness module where I train them in physical fitness program where they can take it on the road, because you can take them to a gym and teach them everything in the gym, but they don't have a gym on the road necessarily, right? So how do you take that on the road? What are some things you can do? What are some things you can purchase for that, that you can take on the road? The TRX, for example, stuff like that, So we'll do physical fitness. We'll do, I have a physical combatives module, which is a very simple, effective program for them to use to be able to manipulate people in ways, offsetting their balance to get them to move in the way you want them to move, moving your principal in a way that protects them and you, and just things like that. Is very concentrated on the executive protection world where, a lot of programs will, okay, someone points a gun at you, what do you do? Well, you disarm them. I'm like, great. So he's pointing a gun at him. How do I disarm him? Right? Because you don't worry about you. If the guy's pointing a gun at your principal, how you disarm him, right? That's a different skill set. So things of that nature. And then the third one is scenario-based training, where I take them out and we use ammunition guns, airsoft guns, things of that, and we'll run scenarios and we'll try to integrate all different things in that. For instance, medical, which is another module I do. Medical for executive protection teams. And so we'll integrate the medical and the physical combatives and everything else into those scenarios and see how they do. And then we'll just talk about it afterwards. So what did you see? What do you do here? What did you do there? They find that very, very enlightening. And then the firearms portion. Yeah. firearms portion, of course, we do 4 modules in that training course, and that is, take them from the very basics because we don't know where they're at, and then we bring them all the way up to moving and shooting, moving from cover to cover, moving principals around as they're shooting, things like that. So we do a lot of training with those teams. And then we do, like I said, the worship security teams. I'm training right now. I have 4 different worship security teams I'm training. It's a shame we have to do that, but we do. It's becoming more prolific for acts of violence in churches and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I also teach a lot of private courses. I'm introducing a new course this summer I'm pretty excited about. That's anti-car or counter carjacking course.
That'll be interesting.
Carjackings are out the roof here right now.
Wow.
Happening every day. And so we're going to do a course on that. We do courses on intro to carbines, so intro to rifle shooting, things like that. Then we also have different levels of pistol shooting. We start off the pistol level 1, which gives you a permit to carry in Minnesota and several other states, as well as a more advanced training. And then the second one is more of a moving and shooting course, where you're shooting, getting those same people that have the first course, moving and shooting a little more. And then the third course is more of a gunslinger course, where you're doing a lot of defensive tactics, combatives, as well as the firearms. We're combining the two. Very fun course. And I also have, what we're also excited about this year, we're doing a week-long course for personal preservation, which is going to be awesome. It's going to be, so you show up Sunday night, right? We have a dinner, and you get to meet all the instructors, just take the edge off of the training, no pressure, right? And then Monday morning we start doing pistol shooting, rifle shooting, we do combatives, we do medical, we do scenario-based training, we do everything that week. And in the middle of the week, we take a break, we do something fun. At the end of the week, we do a celebration of everyone graduating, hopefully. And yeah, it's going to be epic. So very excited about that. So yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff, a lot of new stuff this summer. So
It sounds like so much fun. So obviously you have the stuff that's for your your executive security teams. Is that course that you're just talking about, can anybody do that, or is that still just the teams?
Anybody.
Anyone. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. No, that sounds fun. That sounds lots of
fun.
So if somebody wants to find out more information about any of what all the different courses and that you run, how do they go about doing it? We'll put the link down in the description down below.
Yeah, it's Core, CORE, security, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, from Minnesota.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, all the social media sites under the same title. Cool. So yeah.
Perfect. Now we'll put all those links down in the description down below.
Great.
Because that'd be great for people that are wanting to upskill themselves and hone in those skills, because they are perishable, as we know.
And this is perfect timing, because we literally just put our full schedule for 2023 on our website yesterday. So,
okay, so
perfect timing.
Beginning of December, and it's all gone live. Yep. Now, Joe, last question that I like to ask before I kind of give you an opportunity to kind of say any words. What would be your top tip to self-happiness?
Top tip to self-happiness. That's a good question. I would say, I'll revert back to my last statement: play the long game. Understand that no matter how bad things get now or how bad they've been before, you got a lot to go, and everything happens for a reason, man. I'm a firm believer in that. Trust me, I've had a lot of negative things happen to me, and some pretty significant ones. I highlighted all the glorious parts of my career, but trust me, there were some bad ones in there, where I thought, what in the world is going on? And this is it, or this is the end of my career, or this or that, but man, everything happens for a reason. Because if those things didn't happen, it wouldn't have led me to the next evolution of my career. And if those things didn't happen in that area, that wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have made, been a federal air marshal. And then, if those things didn't happen, I wouldn't have retired when I did, and I wouldn't have the company I have, the family I have. And I'm just, right now I am living the dream, literally. So I'm retired. I've got my own business. It's doing what I want when I want. It's great. And trust me, it was never. There was times I thought that was it. That there's no getting over this. There's no getting past this. You always do.
You always
You
find a
always
way,
do.
especially when you have
Yep,
that warrior mindset of let's
that's
just
right.
keep moving.
That's right.
Nah, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Joe. Any last words that you want to say or give?
No, no, I really appreciate the time you having me on. This is a pretty important topic, burnout, and especially now with the times we're in, um, especially in the United States, especially in Minnesota, honestly.
Yeah.
Ground zero for George Floyd and everything that happened after that. So,
We didn't even talk about any of that today.
no, but yeah, that's a whole different podcast right there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's important work you're doing, and I appreciate that, and I hope you keep doing it because it's very much needed.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I always love to hear when people appreciate what I'm doing, because it can be hard. You know how
I
departments are.
bet. I
but
bet. Trust me,
but
I
you know
work with a
what?
lot of law enforcement. It's not easy.
No, it's like cracking a very hard shell. But hey, we're
Yes.
chiseling away at it. We're chiseling away and sharpening the tools. So we're getting there. It's a process, but it's going to be worth it in the end. And it already is worth it. Well, thank you, Joe, for being here. Again, this is Fight the Burnout, where we bring you real life stories of people, what they do, how they work through it, how they have worked through it, what they do every single day. Uh, I want to thank you for listening and for watching. And also remember that you can find more details, and you can also reach out to me. My email is down below. Should you be struggling with any form of burnout, or whether you, or ideally that you want to prevent it, you want to figure out ways to prevent it, we can help out. And until next time, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with somebody that you know that maybe needs to hear what Joe had to say today, because there's a lot of really good, as I call it, nuggets in there to learn from and to run with. So get after it. Remember, train hard, test easy, because we're always going to be tested, so we may as well be prepared.